We are live.
Hey, right on. We're back. We're the Sportster show on Facebook, eventually Twitter, YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you want to download and listen to this show. We appreciate you joining us. Norman, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Good. It's been about a week and change since we dropped episode 3 of the podcast and went live
hmm
on YouTube and talked a little bit about Raw and AEW and SmackDown. We did kind of a recap on those shows, but we're going to take a little different approach today. We'll
hmm
talk some news because there is some news to talk about when it comes to especially WWE. And today, Impact Wrestling announced a couple departures, but we're also going to take a look at the best tag teams in the industry right now, both in WWE and AEW. So we're going to have a little fun for the next 20, 30 minutes or so. Where should we start? Let's maybe cover some of the news on Raw. We saw a couple of really big returns. Mustafa Ali and Asuka are back. Which one of these two is more surprising to you?
Definitely Ali is more surprising. I think Asuka is, a welcome sight. It's great to have her back. She was sorely missed. The women's division is. I don't think anyone can argue that the women's division is much better for having her in it. But Ali was definitely the most surprising because having read and heard and seen his own tweets and his own words, what's been going on backstage and all the backstage politics and all the tension that there is between him and WWE higher ups. It was kind of surprising to see him appear because I think a lot of people were assuming we were going to get a sort of Neville situation, a Park situation where they just kind of punish him for being insolent by never using him, and just keeping him backstage and keeping him under contract without actually putting him on TV. So it was good to see him back, and maybe it seems like they maybe figured something out, or they came to some sort of agreement where they were like, look, you can either ride out your contract and not do anything, or you can ride out your contract and do something. And yeah, they went with the latter option. So
Yeah, you got to wonder what happened, what that conversation was looking like, because prior to Monday, there was I mean, maybe prior to Sunday or Saturday, I think like early Monday when word started to leak that he might be there. There was no sign of him coming back. There was no talk about him. There was no discussion behind the scenes that we were aware of that he was even on their radar right now. They haven't brought a bunch of people back. Ezekiel, who is Elias, or not, is on the show again, but there really wasn't a lot of talk about him. So, yeah, I kind of wonder what that conversation looked like if they said, "Hey, we have an idea for you. We have a plan." It looks like they're putting him into a feud, a rivalry of some kind already. The segment
mhm.
on with the Miz and I thought that was really interesting because they sort of broke down that fourth wall. They talked about his social media stuff. Theory was like, "Hey, aren't you the guy that took your ball and went home?" And the Miz is like, "Do you still work here?" All right, so they
Yeah.
really addressed all of those kind of behind the curtain rumors without actually addressing them. And then they put him in a feud with Champa, who I guess is no longer Tommaso Ciampa, but just Champa.
Yeah.
So they've got a plan for him. So I wonder if they just said, you know what, this is silly. What are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
let's find something for you to do. Let's put you here. Let's address this. Let's let the cat out of the bag. Let's move on. We'll put you in a feud with Champa. We'll see how it goes. But I am curious though. What do you expect? Like, Champa's probably got to have to win here because he's new to Raw. Mustafa
hmm
Ali probably needs to win here because he's back
hmm
on Raw. What direction does this thing go?
I mean, from someone who, just from a purely sort of wrestling perspective, like if you want to watch two people who are very, very good at wrestling, that a Champa Ali feud has potential to be really, really good. Now, the question is, are WWE going to give it the sort of care, like at the time and the sort of pacing that something like that deserves? And, they don't have a good track record with stuff like that with guys their size. You can see it being kind of relegated to just sort of an afterthought and just being used to get Champa over. I would like it if they could have like a few matches and maybe string it out and then have like a rubber match on a pay per view and give them like enough time to put on a clinic, which they're both capable of doing as we've seen. I would like that. I don't know if we're going to get that, but yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think Ali's a good fodder for Champa. I don't know where that leaves Ali afterwards, but I guess we'll find out.
Well, he looked pretty good. You wouldn't tell he was away for whatever it was, 6 months.
hmm
I thought
hmm
Ali looked really solid in that match. So Yeah, we'll see where it goes. It looks pretty good. As far as Asuka goes, yeah, like you said, good to see her back. I'm not surprised that she didn't say a whole lot. She sort of came out, uh, don't know exactly what she said for half of her promo, and then she said, nobody's ready for Asuka because Becky Lynch was talking up her path back to the Raw Women's title, and nobody was going to be in her way to stop her, which of course is perfect intro for Asuka. Do you think Asuka's a kind of a transitional foe for Becky Lynch to move on to Bianca Belair? We're going to see Lynch and Belair again, or is there a chance because there's that history between Asuka and Becky Lynch where Asuka gave her basically, or Lynch gave her the title in the briefcase. There's some storyline here. Does Asuka get the win here, or is she kind of being used to just move Becky Lynch forward?
Well, it's a tough one. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know that. I mean, I think we're obviously going to see Becky and Bianca at some point again. Yeah, maybe we get some sort of three way feud. Maybe we get some sort of triple threat match somewhere down the line. Yeah, it would be silly. It would be weird to have Asuka come back and then lose her first sort of mini feud, I guess. But at the same time, I guess it doesn't really make sense to have Becky lose a feud after just losing the title at WrestleMania. So yeah, I mean, there's options on the table there. I don't want them to. I hope they don't book themselves into a corner. Maybe would have been better to have Asuka come back and just squash a few lower card talent. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well, I'm not going to pretend for 1 second that Becky Lynch is not the person that you eventually long term put over here, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
she's the star. Asuka's
Mm-hmm.
great, but Becky Lynch is the star. She is one of 3 or 4 women in WWE. And we had a conversation, off record, the other guys here at the Sportster about the women's divisions in each company. Becky Lynch may be the top of all of it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
she's the pedestal, she's the gold trophy, she's what you want. She's the person you put over here, right? So
Mm.
when push comes to shove, Becky Lynch is the man, is big time Bex, is everything that she's made out to be. So Asuka doesn't get the win here eventually. Could it be a short term win? Could it be a short term carryover? Yeah, I could see that, but yeah, I don't expect Asuka to kind of get the rub here right away. By the way, we've got Ozzy with us. He's commenting about my hat, and great
I'm
job
wearing
on
the hat.
YouTube. Not wearing a hat today. You're wearing the hat today.
Yeah, I got
Um,
it.
and Ozzy says Becky looks like the female star from the movie Fifth Element, movie by
Oh,
Bruce Willis.
Mila Jovovich.
Jovovich, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
she did kind of have that outfit on Monday night,
Yeah.
so that was pretty good. Let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about the inspiration, the Iconics, formerly of WWE. The news that
Mm-hmm.
happened this morning in Impact Wrestling. I'm curious to see what your take is here. My guess is that they have just figured out other ways of making money. They're doing whether it's OnlyFans or their own websites. I think they have CassieWorld.com and Jessica McKay World, and whatever they're doing. They probably are doing so well with those two things and the revenue that they're making that they maybe don't need the
Yeah.
wrestling gig.
Yeah.
I don't know how often they're working in Impact Wrestling, how many contract or many shows they were scheduled to do, but looks like both sides have decided to just amicably part ways,
Yeah.
and they both made announcements this morning that they're moving on. So, what do you make here of the fact that Inspiration's done with Impact Wrestling and Cassie Lee and Jessica McKay are kind of doing their own thing now?
I mean, it always once when they got released by WWE, I got the vibe that their heart wasn't really in professional wrestling. I think they love the industry and they feel like they owe the industry a lot. But I definitely got the vibe that they were like, they weren't really like putting themselves out there much and sort of doing the thing that a lot of people do when they get released, which is trying to like start beefs on Twitter and trying to like at Tony Khan and at Scott Diamond or whatever. They weren't doing any of that. And it felt like from the get, as soon as they got released, that they were more interested in kind of pursuing alternative revenue streams, which they were able to do, thankfully. Yeah, I guess maybe they started at Impact. They got sort of hot shotted to the titles straight away, the tag titles, and maybe they just didn't settle in, and they just found that they found it hard to adapt to a style that wasn't WWE style, probably. And they just they just kind of fell out of love with the actual wrestling side of professional wrestling. And they said it's an indefinite sort of hiatus. I can easily foresee them coming back to WWE at somewhere down the line. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
was a
they're
little
great.
shocked when they were released. I mean, we could say that about a lot of people, and the way those cuts
Mm,
happened and the 100 people
hmm.
that were gone. They were shocking to me simply because of the fact that they were so good at their behind the scenes stuff, their
Yeah.
promos backstage, their YouTube
Hmm.
interviews, their WWE exclusives, things like that, that they didn't get a lot of credit for. They were really, really good. Then they broke them up, right? They split them and had them do individual stuff, and I think that was the writing on the wall. It was the end for them, but they're really good at this. Like they are extremely good at being creative and finding alternate ways of getting attention. And they immediately did that when they left, right? They didn't sign with AEW, which I thought there would be a spot for them to do so. And they are working, I think, Impact for the most part. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. You know more than I do. Is more of a part-time gig for people. It's not necessarily full-time touring shows all
Yeah.
the time,
Exactly. Yeah.
things like that. So for them, this allowed them to do a podcast. It allowed them to create their own websites. It allowed them to do other subscription services, which I'm sure they're raking in money because one, they're creative. Two, they look like $1 million. Like they're doing well, right?
Yeah.
So there's really no reason. My only concern, I suppose, for them, and not that I should be concerned for them, I'm sure they're doing wonderfully well. Is that was wrestling the catalyst? Was it the intro, the window to lead people and fans to their other stuff? And will they lose that a
Hmm.
little bit? But
Yeah.
Impact Wrestling is not as big. It doesn't have as huge a platform as WWE, AEW, and they're doing just fine. So
Yeah,
maybe it
they
doesn't
could
matter.
go down like a sort of Bella's path, maybe. Maybe they'll get a sort of reality show or something and start launching their own wines and stuff like that. You never know.
Yeah, they certainly be good candidates for it because they're
Hmm.
creative and funny. And if you've ever listened to their podcast, it's really interesting. And they
Yeah.
talk about pretty much everything under the sun. Okay, I don't know. Is there any other news we've missed? Anything? We've got
I
WrestleMania
mean,
Backlash around the corner here, but
yeah, there's a few little. I mean, it hasn't been a sort of monumental week for news yet. Yeah, there's a few little bits, but nothing. I think we can move on.
okay, let's get into
Yeah.
the tag team conversation then, because that was one of the things we wanted to talk about today. We decided to
Yeah.
pick a topic, and we're going to do this every once in a while for these podcast episodes and
Hmm.
live YouTubes. Is just find a topic that we want to dig into. We had tossed around a couple, but we settled on this one. Best tag teams. Now we're not talking about. I went on Facebook Live when I did my show on Monday. I had a lot of people giving me their best tag teams of all time, and that might be a topic for another day. And we could
Yeah.
certainly talk about who that is. But
I mean, it's the British Bulldogs, obviously, but you know.
yeah, I heard Demolition. I heard lots of good ones that I'm huge fans of. Because 80s to early 90s tag teams for me, that was the cat's pajamas. That was the
Yeah.
best
Oh, absolutely.
best
That
time
was
in
the golden
wrestling.
age of tag team
Oh
wrestling
my
by
gosh,
a
yeah,
million
so
percent.
good.
Yeah. Heart Foundation, all kinds of. You got
I
everyone.
remember the
Legion of
very first
Doom.
Survivor Series when they had all the tag teams on each side, and there were like 16 guys on the ring apron, and there was really
Mm-hmm.
no ring apron left because all the tag teams were just waiting to tag. That was when you knew tag team wrestling was at its all-time high because there were
And what happened?
so many good teams.
What
But
happened to What happened, Vince Jr.? What happened?
I don't know. I just wonder if he just
Yeah.
decided he's like, because he throws a lot of. You look back and you realize that there were a lot of good teams that came together, but there was also a lot of thrown together teams, which he still does, right?
Yeah.
Like Young Stallions were a
Yeah.
thrown together team. Powers of Pain,
Hmm.
thrown together team. Like
Yeah.
a lot of really solid tag teams were just thrown together. And he
Yeah.
does that, right? That's just kind of his
Hmm.
thing. But back then, man, there were tag teams who were tag teams. Killer
Yeah.
Bees, British Bulldogs, Heart Foundation, all those guys, the
Rockers.
Rougeos, yeah,
Yeah.
Rockers, like they were tag teams. That was the thing. There's
Hmm.
not a lot of them these days in
Yeah.
WWE, more in AEW. But let's kind of talk about. We'll run through a handful of them. We'll go yay or nay as to whether or not we think they should be in the conversation of
Yeah.
great tag teams. And I don't know how we're going to define great, but
Yeah.
whether they're worth being considered, the top tier of the tag teams this year. You want to flop back and forth between WWE and AEW, or do you want to take one promotion at a time and go there?
Yeah, let's flip back and forth, and then maybe throw. There's a couple that aren't. There's like maybe one or two tag teams that aren't in either promotion that I think are worth mentioning. But yeah, we can start. Why don't you lead the way?
Okay, well, let's start with WWE because there are fewer tag teams to talk about,
Yeah,
I think, in
shockingly.
WWE than there are in AEW. But I mean, I think top of the food chain probably in WWE is the Usos. Do you agree?
Mm, I absolutely agree. Yeah, right now they're the best tag team. I mean, they have a case for being the best tag team in the world right now. Um, They just have been consistently great for ages. I think for a long time I wasn't really into them, right? Before, remember when they turned heel and then they did start doing the Uso Penitentiary stuff?
Yeah.
That's when everything clicked, and
Yeah,
that's
for
when they
sure.
started to become what they had clearly always wanted to do. And since then, they've just been just like straight to the top. Everything they do, not everything they do, but almost everything they do is just gold. They always give 110%. They always want to have the best match on the card. That's pretty obvious every time you watch one of their matches. They're trying to have the best match on the card, usually. If they're given enough time, they can normally do that. They just work their asses off. I think they're both really, really charismatic. They're great on the mic. They're good in the ring. And I think when it's all said and done, they're going to be considered one of the best tag teams ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can agree with almost everything you said there. The one thing I will add to that is I remember when they first kind of got going, they sort of had that Islanders slash Samoan
Yeah, they were
feel
doing
to
the
them
haka and all
with the
that. Yeah.
orange tights and the face paint and stuff.
Yeah.
They were really good then, but you didn't take them as seriously, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They
Yeah.
weren't in that upper level. You always kind of figured, well, these guys are good, but they'll probably lose this match or whatever, right? Now you look at them when I don't want to say that they became more street cred kind of tag team, but they
Yeah.
sort of did, right? They turned the corner there, sort of went away, and ironically or interestingly, they're sort of going back to the Samoan roots a little bit with the whole
Yeah, the
bloodline thing.
bloodline, yeah.
But they've mixed both worlds, right? They've
Yeah.
got the street cred still, but they've got the Samoan dynasty behind them, and
Mm-hmm.
now they're really, really good. I marvel at how much they've accomplished, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't even think about it. Like the
Yeah.
longest reigning SmackDown Tag Team Champions, I think they have more. I don't know what the stats are, but I bet you the stats page is huge. Like when it
Yeah.
comes to what they've actually done
Mm-hmm.
and accomplished as a tag team in WWE, they've probably shattered all sorts of records.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that we'd both vote them at the top
I
there.
mean, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility to expect a solo run from one of them at some point. We had it teased a little bit, you know. I can see one of them maybe winning Money in the Bank at some point. And I think I think both of them separately have the ability to succeed as a solo performer. Obviously, it seems like only one of them will be able to.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You know, Jay, we got that a little bit with Jay. The one thing that concerns me about the Usos, and I don't know if it's a real concern, even WWE's worried about it, but they seem to get themselves in trouble outside of the
that's
ring
true.
sometimes,
Yeah, that is
right?
true.
And you wonder if that is going to ever get in the way of
Yeah.
them being as good as they could possibly be. All right, let's move on. RK Bro, here's a team that we talk about teams being thrown together. Most of the time, it doesn't work. This one has really, really worked. Riddle and
Yeah.
Orton have amazing chemistry,
Hmm.
and it's just one of those teams that the second you put it together, you're like, this is an odd one, but the oddity works. Like it just really, they're so different from each other, but that difference, the play, the chemistry is there. Um,
Yeah.
the question I get all the time on these videos is, when are they breaking up? So
Yeah.
what do you expect?
I mean, I hope that they don't. I mean, I would consider it a swerve if they didn't break them up and they did just kind of maybe part ways and do some go on separate singles runs and keep coming back together. It's maybe like a rock and sock connection kind of thing, you know. They can have matches together, but I just don't want. I would prefer if there wasn't like a big turn. I think, and I think it would be. I don't think they should pull the trigger on that anytime soon. Honestly, that's just my personal opinion. Yeah, I mean they're both they've got a lot of chemistry. They're great together. Maybe on paper it didn't seem like it would work, and I think a lot of what we're seeing on screen is their dynamic backstage, right? I do feel like Orton feels like he has to take this kid under his wing a little bit because I feel like we've read stories about Riddle and what he's like backstage and how he can be a little bit of a gobshite and rub people the wrong way. He's always kind of jokingly trying to start beefs with people, and then it gets, you know, people like Goldberg get a little bit upset. And I feel like Randy kind of sees a lot of himself in Riddle, especially. I think they both bond over some extracurricular activities. Let's say I think they share common interests.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's definitely an element of their chemistry there. Yeah, so my opinion is I don't want him to split up. I want him to maybe separate, have singles runs separately, have matches every now and then, do rock and sock connection thing, keep coming back together, having matches every now and then.
I get what you're saying. I disagree, only because I just think the split will be so big when it happens, right? Like we're talking mega powers kind of turn, right? Like
Yeah.
Randy
Mhm.
Savage being jealous of something, whatever. I have no clue who would turn heel here.
That's
I would
yeah.
have
That's what's
thought immediately
complicated.
would be Orton. I'm not so
Yeah.
sure about that now. I don't
Right.
know how you make the Riddle heel character a heel.
Hmm.
Maybe they can figure it out. My guess would be that it's Orton and that Riddle eventually goes over.
Hmm.
That said, I think that needs to be delayed. I think if they had immediate plans or soon plans for that to happen, I think that's been pushed back and they're
Hmm.
going to give these guys as long a run as they can. I would keep it in the background, just had a bubbling underneath that maybe it's potentially there. But I
Yeah.
believe that that match, Riddle and Orton, when it happens in that big turn that you don't want to see, does happen, I think that's huge for WWE. I just don't know how
Yeah.
you don't do it. Like I just
And
think
look,
you have to take advantage of what heat is going to come on the person who turns on the other guy because these everybody loves these guys so much that you will make a huge mega heel out of the guy who ruins this.
I think the smart thing to do, if they are going to do that, would be to turn Riddle and have Riddle turn on Orton. I think that would be fun. And look, we know we've seen it before that it doesn't mean no split is permanent, right?
Yeah.
DIY, the list goes on and on. People they always come back together eventually. Well, not always, but sometimes, So they could have a rift and then mend their relationship a few years down the line and kick everything back off again. So yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's Shawn
definitely,
Michaels, Triple H, right?
yeah,
And the
exactly,
good
yeah,
thing about both of these guys is that neither one of them, usually when you split a tag team, one guy goes on to great glory, the other guy is Marty Jannetty,
yeah,
right? That won't happen here because both
yeah,
of these guys are
exactly.
so established that even if you're putting Riddle over at the expense of Randy Orton, Randy Orton's Randy Orton. Randy Orton's going to be fine. There's
Hmm.
nothing that you have to worry about. They'd be like, oh my God, we're burying Randy Orton. It's not happening, right?
Hmm.
Riddle's too popular to bury him. So I
Yeah,
don't think you have to worry about that, which is why, again, I would do that. But I get where you're coming from. A lot of people love this team.
yeah.
So I could understand why they wouldn't. Okay, Street Profits, probably right
Oh,
up there
that's who I
too.
was gonna say. Yeah, I was definitely gonna throw. I was gonna throw Street Profits in there too, actually. So I'm glad you mentioned them. Yeah, really charismatic. They nailed their gimmick. I think. I mean, you mentioned earlier. You talked about Michaels and Jannetty. I do think if anyone is the Shawn Michaels, it's Montez Ford here. No offense to Angelo Dawkins, so I think is really entertaining. I just think Montez is really, really good in the ring. Really smooth, really crisp. Incredibly charismatic. Great on the mic. I really, really see a. I can really see a very successful singles run in Montez Ford. I think there's money on the table if they don't do that. Like literally like main event stuff I can see in
Yeah.
him somewhere down the line. In terms of tag team, right? I don't. I think they're incredible. I think they're really good. I think they're really, really entertaining. I think right now they are in that conversation for like best tag team, but I don't think they are actually there. I do think there's a few above them who are just more consistent and are making the most of the time they've been given a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't see them getting to that level either because I think the split happens first, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
with you that Montez Ford is a star. Uh,
Hmm.
I believe it'll be as a heel. I think
Right. Yeah.
he's
Hmm.
like a skinny version of The Rock to me. He's got all
Hmm.
those tools and that charismatic ability to just come up with a line that you're like, oh
Yeah.
my God, that was gold, right?
Hmm.
And I think as a heel, he's going to be he's much bigger star than he is right now. I
Hmm.
don't want to say that Angelo Dawkins is going to be I talked about Marty Jannetty's right as a reference here. I don't think that will happen for him, but I do think Montez goes on to be the big name here,
Yeah.
and we wonder what will happen with Angelo Dawkins, right?
Hmm.
Hopefully, it's not a heavy machinery situation, where somebody's gone.
Yeah.
Angelo's pretty good. Like
Yeah.
he's fairly talented too. I just don't know when you split the Dudleys and you got Bubba doing one thing and Devon doing another. Is Angelo Dawkins the Devon?
Reverend Devon, you
You know
mean?
what I mean? Like that's what you got to wonder, right? So that's the only reason I hesitate to split those guys up because I think one guy goes in one direction, shoots straight up the ladder, and the other guy sort of toils around. But I don't know that the Street Profits ever get to that really high level because I think WWE is going to push Montez forward before they ever get that to that point.
Mm,
So
yeah.
we'll see what happens there.
Hmm.
Here's a tag team I don't want to even consider in the category yet, but I do think could be good. Los Lotharios. I really like Angel and Umberto as a team. I think they have
Yeah.
a lot of potential. Do
Hmm.
you think these two last? Already we've seen hints of some friction between these two
Yeah.
cousins. Could they be in that tier of tag teams, or do you think they get split prior to?
Yeah, I feel like they're going to get split before they get a chance to really succeed. I do think Gaza is the better just all round performer, better just in ring and sort of has a little bit more charisma than Umberto. And so I work if they, I think it's a little bit early to split them up to sort of throw them together. I mean, I know that they're cousins, right? In real life, I think.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah,
All kind of in that
family.
yeah. I'm not sure exactly what the relation is,
But to
but
put them, yeah, to throw them together, I guess makes sense. But then it would be kind of premature to split them up now, which is what they're teasing. But if they do that, it's not gonna like be the end of the world because, like I say, I think Gaza has potential as a single star. I mean, Eddie Guerrero is the very obvious comparison, but I think I think that kind of almost does him a disservice because he doesn't need to sort of live up to that. But he definitely is a very entertaining guy.
okay. There's a handful more that we'll fly through here. Alpha Academy. Let's talk about stars. I think Chad Gable's the guy here.
I love Chad Gable.
Oh
Yeah,
my God, he's so good, and he's
yeah.
been with them for so long and been under their
Hmm.
noses for so long
Hmm.
that it's amazing that it took this long for people to figure out that he's gold. He's so good, right? Like
Yep.
he is Kurt Angle in that he has this untapped potential to bring you in with the stuff that he says. Like the
Mhm.
fact that he's got Shoosh over
Yeah.
as high as well as he has, that tells you all you need to know. And he can go. Like the guy Otis is great too. And I love the small and the big of the Alpha Academy, that that dichotomy of the two size guys and stuff like that reminds me a little bit of the Brett and Jim the Anvil sort of uh,
Yeah.
comparisons. But I
Mhm.
think Chad Gable. Again, where do you rank Alpha Academy here?
Again, not. I don't think they're necessarily in the conversation, but I think they're fun, and I think they're both. I think they're kind of doing. I think they're taking the ball and running. Running with it. I think they're taking the baton and running with it. I think they're doing a really good job with what they've been given. But yeah, I don't think they're quite in the conversation for like best tag team in the world just yet.
What about Dirty Dogs? Here's the reason I like this team a lot, but the reason I kind of every once in a while watch them, I'm like, man, I had so much hope for Robert Roode.
Yeah,
The
I know,
glorious
man.
gimmick when he came to
Yeah.
WWE and NXT was so good for a year, and then they just dropped the
Hmm.
ball with him on
Yeah.
SmackDown. But the tag teams turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're two veterans, been around a long time, and they're always
Hmm.
probably going to be guys that are used to enhance and put other people over.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
can't imagine that, but pretty underappreciated tag team, yes?
For sure, yeah. I mean, they got chemistry. They seem to be enjoying what they're doing. Yeah, and they might just have accepted their lot on that roster, which is just getting the odd big win every now and then, but mostly just there to put people over. And they're probably
Uh,
happy to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I mean, they know the
Hmm.
role, right? They know
Yeah.
what job they're there to do, especially Dolph, right? He knows
Mm-hmm.
his job is to look as good as he can look because he knows he looks good
Yeah.
and get other people over in the process. Ray and Dominic, how much longer do you think this lasts?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm getting kind of bored with them, to be honest with you. I think Dominic. I'm not alone. I don't think of thinking this. I think Dominic needs to go down to NXT for a little bit and just simmer down there for a bit. I don't think he's really like main roster TV ready. It's obviously a really cool story to have him in the ring with his dad very often. Um, yeah, I don't know if I'd put them up there, but yeah, I think it's cute.
Okay, and we would be remiss if we did not end on the New Day.
Yeah.
Probably they won the top 50 tag teams in WWE history. They were
Oh,
number one.
absolutely. Yeah.
Are they still there? Does the Big E injury change things?
Yeah.
Are they past that point now where you look at New Day in that conversation? Have they sort of had their moment in the sun and
Yeah, I
now
think
we're
they're in
moving on
there.
from them?
I think they're in that conversation of greatest tag teams of all time, absolutely. But for right now, I think they've kind of plummeted down the rankings a little bit. But I mean, I'm sure they'll be able to claw their way back up very easily. So yeah, I think they're one of the greatest tag teams of all time. But right now, I think there's quite a few above them.
Yeah, I am a little concerned about Big E and what his
Mm,
future means, and if he's coming back, if he's not coming back, if he does come
yeah,
back, in what capacity will he be there? And while the New Day is probably in the top five for sure of greatest tag teams WWE has ever had, I think that their success lies as a trio. And if you're just dealing with Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston now, it
yeah. It's
changes the
not the
picture
same.
for me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to All Elite Wrestling. AEW's
Hmm.
known for their tag team division. Is it as good today as it was when it started? Now there are more teams than when they started, but the teams that they had when they kicked things off was pretty much the staple of what AEW was going to be. They were going to
Yeah.
be the best promotion for tag team wrestling in the world. Is it still that?
I think so. Honestly, I think so. Right now, I think actual like for pure in ring action, I think they deliver on a more consistent basis. I think the booking is more consistently enjoyable than it has been in WWE recently. Tag team, just talking about tag team stuff. And yeah, I think it seems like they actually care a little bit more about actual tag team wrestling. So yeah, I mean, I do think that's the standout promotion as far as tag team wrestling goes right now, currently.
All right, so let's start with the tag team champions, who, by the way, I do not think should even be in this conversation.
Mm,
Jurassic Express.
hmm
I think Jungle Boy's got a huge future, and Luchasaurus is
mm,
pretty awesome. But
yeah,
they, to me, aren't in this conversation. Where do you
yeah,
rank Jurassic Express in terms of great tag teams?
yeah. I don't know that they are in the conversation right now. It seems to be whatever they're doing right now. It all seems to be some building to something with Christian. Maybe they do still feel like a transitional team to me. I think if Phoenix hadn't got injured, maybe they might not even be champs. So yeah, I don't know that I'd put them up there. I think they're doing a good job though. I think they're sort of representing the brand very well, and obviously they sell a lot of merch. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they're different. They're viewed differently, right? Like they're a fan favorite.
yeah,
They're the attraction so much, not the, although both guys can go,
hmm
not necessarily the technical tag team that you get to know with AEW, things like that. They're the guys they're the Orange Cassidy of the tag team division, right? Like they're a lot of
yeah,
fun. Really, yeah, everybody gets excited to see them. Everybody loves to sing Tarzan Boy, all that
yeah.
stuff. But yeah, not quite there in terms of the actual tag teams. All right. So my question, here's the deal: is it the Young Bucks or is it FTR? Who is the
For right
best
now,
tag team in All Elite Wrestling?
for me, it's FTR, and it's not even really that close right now. Just examining their work over the last for just for 2022, I would say. They're for me FTR is the best tag team in the world right now. Yeah, pretty easily. I don't think it's not a tough decision for me to say really. The in ring action they just deliver consistently all the time. They're exciting. They understand tag team wrestling better than almost anybody who is a tag team wrestler on the planet right now. They their attitudes are just perfect for their characters. They sort of live their gimmicks in a way. Like you never see them in an interview sort of break character. I think because their characters are them to an extent, right? They're just two workhorses who want to show that they're the best tag team in the world, and that's what they keep doing on a consistent basis. Um, I think if you watch their match with the Briscoes at Supercard of Honor from from earlier this month,
Hmm.
um, it would be hard to argue that that's not the best tag team in the world, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that there are conversations and rumors and speculation that WWE might be interested, even though WWE doesn't really push their tag team division very much.
hmm
Because FTR has cemented themselves as the team to watch here, at least in 2022. I was a little whatever when they first got to AEW because I thought, okay, here's some really good opportunities to push a tag team, and they kind of didn't. They sort
yeah.
of
I
had
mean,
them
that's
in the background, but they didn't
hey,
really
AEW
expose.
does that. AEW
Yeah,
does that. They'll debut someone. They'll give people this big, exciting debut, and then kind of cool off on them for a bit,
yeah.
right? Then they won't really do much with them, and then eventually, we saw it with Miro. We've seen it with a bunch of people. Eventually, they will. Eventually, they do get a spotlight, right? They do. There's like a rotational policy, I think, with AEW booking. I think people tend to worry a little bit too much when someone comes in and isn't being pushed to the top straight away. But yeah, FTR did eventually start getting booked well. They had like brilliant matches with the Bucks. Yeah, so yeah, I totally understand why when they first came in you were a little bit concerned.
I do wonder if I mean they have because they have all these interpromotional things. They've got whether it's New Japan, Ring of Honor, all these things, and
Triple
the
A.
FTR can hold all of these belts. They are the perfect tag team for this, right? I wonder if the Young Bucks backstage are kind of like, you know what, we're good. Like we don't need to do that because they would be the team to me that would do that if there was no FTR in AEW. That would be
Yeah.
the Young Bucks holding all these titles.
Mm.
But I think the Young Bucks as EVPs and other things like they're like, you know what, let's push them. Let's make sure that it's there. And FDR is a legitimate threat in every promotion, and they like
Mm-hmm.
wrestling all over the place, and they're
Mm-hmm.
into it. I think it means more to them to hold all of these belts at the same time. So yeah, I agree. I think they're probably the top tag team. And I have come on record before and said that I am not the biggest Young Bucks fan. I do like everything they've done for the industry, but I dislike as many of their matches as I love, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when I watch them, I'm like, man, this is really good. Then other times I'm watching them, I'm like, oh my god, this is like a car wreck spot fest that just doesn't make any sense to me. FTR is not that team. FTR's matches are always solid. They're always legitimate. They follow the rules, but they cheat because they're heels. Like they do everything that the old school tag team fans love, but they're also new and hip enough that people are kind of like, this is a tag team for today, and so
Yeah.
that's why I put them there. Where would you rank the Young Bucks? Are they a solid second or are they not?
I don't think they're a solid second, right? I would probably say the Usos are second. I think the Bucks are. They have a good shout, a good case for being third, because they still do deliver in the ring with the right opponent, like we saw with FTR a few weeks ago. But like you said, yeah, I don't think the Young Bucks, I don't think are sort of focused necessarily on being the best tag team in the world in like outside, like in real life, right? Obviously, I think in kayfabe, that's something they want to be considered as. But I think yeah, backstage they're EVPs and they're quite happy to just to let FTR sort of carry the division on their shoulders.
Are they a second solid second in AEW, or do you think that goes if Ray Phoenix is healthy to the Lucha Bros?
I think if Phoenix when Phoenix is healthy, I think it's probably the Lucha Bros. But it definitely changes, right? It definitely flicks back and forth. But so yeah, right now I would say right now it's probably FTR. Then I guess you have to say Jurassic Express because they are the champs, and then probably the Bucks. And they've got there's a few other tag teams floating around down there for sure, right? Not a lot. I think there's a few. You've got like the Gun Club, and you've got teams like this who are kind of they get built up, right? They rack up these wins on Dark and Dark Elevation. So then when they get beat by people like FTR or the Bucks or Jurassic Express or the Lucha Bros, it makes them. It looks like this is an impressive victory. Um, but yeah, Young Bucks are up there. They're always going to be up there.
Where do you rank Red Dragon now? Are they a team that has even reached anything close to what they did in NXT as Undisputed Era? To me, not even close. Like
Not yet.
I've been very disappointed in how AEW has handled the Adam Cole acquisition. There's been some really good spots, and then some other times you're like, what are they doing with them? And then I think Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish have just not been used like
Right. So
the stars they were coming out of NXT.
they can't decide whether they want them to be. It seems like they can't decide whether they want them to be a tag team or single stars. And I think maybe I think it's probably fine if they're a tag team that sometimes they have singles matches, right? Um, it's interesting. I would like to see them. It did look like they were gonna hotshot them for a bit there, right? I thought they were close to winning the titles a couple of weeks ago from Jurassic Express. I thought they were going to do it. I thought they were going to pull the trigger on it. Yeah, it's interesting to see whether they've both got. I think Bobby Fish probably doesn't have a much potential as a single star anymore, and I don't know if he's even particularly interested in that. He's a veteran. He's more. I think he's there just more to sort of mentor the younger guys for sure. Kyle O'Reilly can do it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if they do decide that they would rather have them be single stars, O'Reilly's your man, right? He can. He's got. There's. It's hard to envision the thing where he isn't in the main event at some point.
Where do you rank the Hardys? Are they a team now that all this talk about them being on Dark and Elevation and not being used in major roles, is that to you as big a disappointment as some fans are making it out to be that Jeff Hardy's come over from WWE and he's not really done a whole lot? To me, Matt Hardy might be. I like Matt Hardy a lot. I like the Hardys a lot. Matt Hardy may be the most disappointing AEW acquisition in WWE history. He just has not found his footing ever. Like when he first got there with the broken Matt gimmick, didn't work. When he
Yep.
moved over to Big Money Matt, didn't work. When
Yep.
all this stuff has not worked. And now that he's with his brother, where he probably really wants to be, they're not even to me in the conversation as
Nah.
far as Are they just at the age now where we've seen this reunion too many times that they're not going to be in that conversation because neither one of them, Jeff is a little crazy, but he's
Yeah.
got to be slowing down. Matt has certainly slowed down.
Yeah.
Where do you put the Hardys in this
I mean,
conversation?
they're in the they're in they're in the conversation for greatest of all time, but right now I don't think they're really anywhere close. I think they're more just there for a little nostalgia pop, it seems like, and we get the little, we get the thing like Jeff doing the swanton through the merch table we got on Dynamite a couple of weeks ago. We're going to get stuff like that, which is always fun to see. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I guess I see them as like sort of a tag team version of Sting now. Like they're kind of fulfilling a role that's a sort of similar role as Sting does in the singles division, but in the tag team division, where they're just there to sell merch and get a little nostalgia pop. But beyond that, I don't really foresee them accomplishing much in terms of accolades. But you never know.
So here's my question. I'm going to give you three teams. Which one of these three is the most underrated tag
Mm,
team in AEW? Is it
mm,
Santana and Ortiz?
right.
Is it
Yeah.
the Acclaimed? Or
Right.
is it, which could be a team, but we don't know if it's going to be officially yet. I'm expecting something between Danhausen and Hook here.
Ha.
What team do you think has the ability to do more than they're currently doing, even though Danhausen and Hook are not
Yeah,
officially a
yeah.
team yet?
Well, the Danhausen and Hook thing, I'm really interested to see where that goes. I actually am really enjoying that storyline. Oddly, I think it's been really well paced and booked out and plotted out. So I'm interested to see where that goes. If they do become a tag team, I could see that being a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, underrated. I mean, look, Santana and Ortiz. It's kind of wild that they haven't been champions yet, right? They're amazing. They're brilliant. And if they were being a little bit more consistently utilized as a I guess recently they've been more involved in these sort of stable unstable things, right? And with this sort of inner circle implosion and now the Jericho Appreciation Society and they're sort of teaming with Eddie Kingston, which is fun and good and necessary, right? At least they're on TV. I think if they were being utilized as an actual tag team a little bit more, they would actually definitely be up in that conversation. But yeah, in terms of underrated, yeah, I mean, they haven't had anywhere near the number of accolades that they deserve to have had by now. So I'm going to say them.
Where do you rank these teams that are not necessarily tag teams but are trios, like Aleister Black's group,
Hmm.
Blackpool, Combat Club,
Yeah,
Dark Order, Best Friends? Like, where do
yeah,
you put these guys? Are they tag teams or are they not tag teams?
yeah. These are interesting, right? Because I guess you can get sort of like free bird rules with that kind of thing. I mean, I like them all. I like them all. Blackpool Combat Club is kind of new. It's a little bit too fresh. I do think they are going to start racking up some wins. I can definitely um, see Danielson and Moxley as tag champs at some point. But then again, they don't even really need the tag titles, right? It's
I don't
Brian
like them
Daniel.
together, to be totally honest with you. I
Oh,
like the
really?
faction, but I think you're
Yeah,
taking two mega stars that could
yeah,
have really solid singles feuds with other singles wrestlers,
yeah.
and you're putting them in a group that, I mean, the group itself is cool, being led by William Regal, and you get to see some stuff for Wheeler Yuta and maybe another guy that they're going to add on here. I don't know if I like the group though. I don't.
Yeah.
I find AEW does that a lot. They just throw people into factions and they say, "Well, come out on TV together." And even Tony Khan's admitted it. He's like, "I just get everybody in groups because I want them all on TV."
Mm.
But I don't know that that's the best use of Brian Danielson and John Moxley.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I don't know if it's going to be. I can see. I think it's possible for them to have. I think it's possible for them to still have singles feuds. You're right. Maybe it is. It's not the in the long run. It probably isn't the best use for them because they are the two of the biggest like singles wrestling stars ever. Um, so yeah, but I think it's fine for right now. Like I think there's a lot of stuff going on in AEW, right? Not everyone they can't. There's not everyone is gonna have something going on. So I think for right now, I think it's a kind of a good spot for Danielson and Moxley to be in. I like the concept, right, which is that this stable is being managed by their mentor, right, the guy who trained them, and they're now training other guys like Wheeler Yuta. I'm sure we're going to see a couple of other youngsters. For me, this stable, Blackpool Combat Club, got Wheeler Yuta over for me in a way that he had never been.
yeah,
Like I thought he was fun, but I never really like connected with him or thought he was particularly like exciting in any way. As soon as he got slapped in the face by William Regal, I was like, oh shit, this guy rules.
do you think that was a Tony Khan thing or a Danielson thing?
It reeks of Danielson to me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he has this tendency to pluck guys like Drew Gulak and the people that he really likes that people don't know, and say, "I'm
Hmm.
going to make this guy into something." And
Yeah.
I just wonder. I think what I'm trying to get at with this Blackpool Comic Club is that I believe it was too soon. The
Yeah.
Brian
I can see that.
Danielson thing, they missed an opportunity to make him the champion. I
Yeah.
don't. They really pushed his wanting to go for it when he came to AEW. He wasn't coming in saying, "Oh, I'm going to teach guy. I'm going to win the title." He said, like he flat out said that on night one. I'm here to win the title, and he had his match with Omega, and then he kind of just sort of backed off of it. And I wonder why they did that. I really would have taken advantage of the fact that he is Brian Danielson, and he
Yeah.
does deserve to hold that title before you put him in a group or a tag team or something else. And to me, that was a missed opportunity. It doesn't mean they
Mhm.
can't do it. It just means
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I thought they pulled this. They just did this too soon.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that.
Yeah. All right. So let's top three. We'll wrap it up with our top three. Is it FTR, Usos, and then who's your number three? Because that's what I'm gathering
Man.
from you. It's FTR and Usos, and then who's number three?
Yeah, it's definitely FTR number one, then Usos. Number three, I mean, look, you saying Santana and Ortiz has really thrown a spanner in the works for me. I think in terms of like personal favorite tag teams, I might have to put them in number three. But if we're going just sort of objectively, best tag teams in the world right now at this very moment, I think you probably have to put RK Bro in there, honestly.
Yeah.
Just in
Well,
terms of,
They might be the most popular. Like
yeah,
they're WWE's got RK Bro, AEW's got Jurassic Express. If you put the two side by side, it's certainly RK Bro. Like that's when you have the similar styles and the different characters and what they do, it's definitely RK Bro.
hmm,
To me, I think number three, man, it's tough. Um, it's probably going to be somebody from AEW. I think Young Bucks you have to consider
yeah,
just
for
simply
sure.
because of the fact that they have done so much and they're so
Yeah.
instrumental in the success of AEW, even though they haven't been pushed like you might have expected Young Bucks to be pushed in that promotion coming out of the gate. I think they've taken a lot of back seats when they have the opportunity to take a back seat. But and Lucha Bros for me too are really there. But I like both of those guys, Phoenix and those Penta, just awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to pick number three, but I agree with you. FTR and the Usos, probably the top two teams.
Mm.
All right, we'll close it off with this because we won't get too deep into the conversation. I think you already answered this. Greatest tag team, your favorite. Doesn't have to be the greatest of all time. Doesn't have to
Yeah.
be the most highest accolades, most records broken. But your favorite tag team in the history of professional wrestling is.
Well, I did say British Bulldogs
I know you
earlier,
said
but
it, but
honestly, yeah. But honestly, I think it just changes depending on my mood. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely Bulldogs are definitely up there. Heart Foundation's definitely up there. Honestly, the New Age Outlaws are up there. Just for that Attitude Era run they had, they were. I think maybe if you look back on it, some of the in-ring stuff wasn't super smooth. But as a kid, I was very enthralled by the New Age Outlaws. Um, Yeah, man. That's. I mean, yeah, I like the Rockers. Yeah, I'll just say British Bulldogs. Why not?
yeah, well, I'll go with a team that fought them a lot. The Hart Foundation for me,
Yeah. Hmm.
uh, that might have been my when I first got into wrestling. I mean, I was watching it just prior to WrestleMania one. That's how long I've been a fan. So the Funks were big for me and stuff like that. But then when it really got into the WrestleManias 2 and 3 and the Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation and those guys were really taking off. Demolition,
Yeah.
Strike Force, all
Right.
that stuff. Hart Foundation for me was it. Bret Hart turned in WrestleMania 4 in the Battle Royal and becoming a singles
Mm.
guy. I was like, oh my God,
Hmm.
this is fantastic. I
Hmm.
always loved Jimmy Hart. The Mouth of the South as a manager for me was maybe one of the best. Heenan's the best manager ever, but
Hmm.
Jimmy Hart was right up there too. So Hart Foundation for me, and I like the British Bulldogs because they wrestle each
There's
other
well,
quite
there's
a bit.
overlap as well, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's overlap behind the scenes and all that. And yeah, it's interesting. I picked a British tag team and you picked the Canadian one.
Yeah, there you go. It makes sense, I suppose, right? Cool. Well, let's close her off for there. Maybe one day we'll have the conversation about the greatest tag teams in the history of
We should
tag
do
team
that, man.
wrestling.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have another topic I think coming up right away here in terms of biggest disappointments in the both promotions, underutilized talent. things
Yeah.
like that for WWE. We'll probably do that one in the
There's
next
a
couple
lot to
weeks.
talk about in both promotions, man. In both
Yeah.
promotions, there's a lot to talk about.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks. This has been another edition of the Sportster Show on YouTube Live, the podcast platforms. Make sure to subscribe and download. Do us a favor, go on Apple Podcasts, put a 5-star rating in there. It helps the show. It's been around a while, but we're now just bringing it back. So we're 4 episodes in. So that would be great if you guys could help us push that again. For Norman Quarrinton, for Jim Parsons at the Sportster, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next time on the Sportster Show.